Please welcome Skift VP of Research, Haixia Wang, and Senior Partner at McKinsey & Company, Jules Seeley, for a State of the Industry presentation by Skift Research in partnership with McKinsey, followed by a panel discussion.
Good morning. I'm Haixia Wang, VP of Research at Skift. As Rafa mentioned, since COVID-19 began, Skift Research has been working really hard to develop data and tools to help travel companies during this challenging time. In addition to regular reporting, we've launched 3 new data products. The first is the Skift Recovery Index, a real-time measure of where the travel industry stands in recovering from the pandemic. The index is calculated based on over 30 leading and trailing indicators to give a holistic view of the industry health. The second is Skift Health Score. It's a proprietary metric that assesses the strengths of public travel companies through selecting and weighting over 20 performance indicators. Our current version includes scores for 100 companies across all travel sectors. The third is US Travel Tracker. It's a monthly survey of 1,000 American consumers with the questions on if they traveled, how and why they traveled, and what's on their mind for future travel. If you're interested in subscribing to our research, we're offering a 25% off for your first year subscription. The offer is valid for the next 2 days. So how to best help our industry come out of this crisis stronger? We wanted to create a report with a bias to action, help travel companies learn from this first 6 months, understand the latest trends, and identify the pragmatic and next steps to emerge from the crisis better than before. We're very excited to partner with McKinsey and Company to achieve this, combining our and McKinsey's research with their insights and client experience. This 75-page report is also informed by our conversations with the travel executives, several of whom will be on stage later today and tomorrow. Now, Jules is going to walk us through some highlights from the report.
Thank you, Haixia, and good morning, everyone. I'm Jules Seeley, a senior partner with McKinsey, and over the past 20 years, I've supported companies across the travel, hospitality, and logistics landscape. I felt the devastating impact of COVID-19 across our industry as an avid traveler myself with family and for work, and also through the impact on many great travel companies. So our team at McKinsey is delighted to be collaborating with Skift at a critically important time for our sector. We hope this report brings a unique perspective on what's really happening and why, informed by our experience serving clients across the travel landscape and beyond, and with a bias to action. What can each of you do as we navigate the path ahead? I'll start with a couple of overall themes. The outlook is sobering for the travel sector, and we're all aware of that. It's trending at the lower end of many of the forecasts. But there are a few glimmers of hope, and orienting to these can unlock real opportunity. Secondly, while customers and employers are anxious and hesitant, people love to and want to travel. It's human nature. How can we help make it better when it comes back? We've identified 4 actions travel companies can pursue to grow beyond the current crisis. Is this travel's moment to reimagine the end-to-end journey? Many of you will have seen the macroeconomic recovery scenarios developed by McKinsey Global Institute and Oxford Economics, and the report details how we translated these to travel and tourism, and reminds us that most estimates are projecting a slower recovery than originally hoped. Scenario A1 in the center is viewed as most likely by about 40% of executives. Practically, it suggests that 2021 will be another tough year for travel in most regions, and full recovery may not occur until 2024, with a cumulative loss of a staggering $6 trillion of travel and tourism spending over the decade. But what global scenarios hide is significant country variation. For example, our analysis on mainland China shows one of these glimmers of hope. Domestic travel has steadily recovered to about 3/4 of pre-crisis levels, and that's before a vaccine. Hotel stays, subway passengers are well up too, although of course international air and cruise remain effectively stopped. While we don't expect this travel rebound in Europe or North America pre-vaccine, we see a few bright spots, like the recent 60% occupancy levels for some US hotel chains over the Labor Day weekend. We also tested customer sentiment to travel before a vaccine is available, and just over half of US business travelers said they expect to travel the same amount or even more than they did in 2019. We find leisure demand looking for opportunity, but held back by limits to what you can do once you get to the destination. And by its nature, group travel and events are some way off. Even this level of uplift in business and leisure travel would transform the economics in the travel ecosystem. So despite a slow overall recovery, we expect to see targeted surges in pent-up demand, and the art will be how to predict and quickly mobilize to meet them. Given our biased action, nearly half of the report focuses on 4 actions travel companies can pursue to grow beyond the current crisis. Firstly, given these glimmers of hope I mentioned, we need to listen to customers in their constantly evolving microsegments, deeply understand their complex needs, and efficiently tailor messages, special offers, and services, not in a creepy way, but with authenticity to reflect that travel is deeply personal and experienced differently by each traveler. Active listening and machine learning techniques can help inform what resonates with customers, and much can be learned from how leading consumer retailers personalize. Secondly, make it better, not just safer. Safety is of course paramount, but there's a unique opportunity to design the next set of thoughtful customer experience interventions across the end-to-end journey. Customer experience is incredibly powerful. Our research suggests that done right, it can boost experience satisfaction, drive revenue, and increase employee engagement, alongside a 20% lower cost to serve. That's quite a package. No wonder 3/4 of senior executives cite customer experience as a top organizational priority. Can you use the current disruption as the catalyst to reimagine a new paradigm for travel, streamlined, low stress, digital, thoughtful, removing pain points and delighting customers, and yes, also delivering a high return on investment? Thirdly, expand your horizons. Profit pools are shifting. Customers are looking for confidence across the entire journey. How can travel companies ensure the ecosystem inspires customer trust without a weak link, with clear standards to rebuild confidence? Could we see a new wave of collaboration with assets, capabilities, and technologies shared for scale or efficiency? Or could leading players branch out into adjacencies to broaden their own revenue streams? Finally, as we look at the COVID response from executives and companies across sectors, it's impressive to see big and bold decisions being made nimbly, despite limited ability to see ahead. How can travel companies harness this crisis-induced agility to drive rapid decisions and actions and continue that pace and decisiveness as the crisis recedes? These topics are the foundation of our report and for our panel discussion, and I'll hand over to Seth to introduce the panelists.
Hi, everybody. My name is Seth Borko, and I'm a senior research analyst here at Skift and one of the co-authors of our report. So Jules just gave you some top-level takeaways from our report, but we wanted to dive a little bit deeper into those 4 actionable takeaways that he ended in. We want to explore how they're being put into use within our industry. And so to that end, I'm excited to introduce an industry panel. Please join me in welcoming our panelists. First, we have Andrew Walterson. He's the Chief Commercial Officer of Southwest Airlines. Second, we have Mark Bondrasek. He's the Chief Commercial Officer at Hyatt Hotels. And lastly, we have Melissa Dalrymple. She's a partner at McKinsey & Company and a leader in their global consumer experience and design practice. So thank you all for joining me.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
All right, Melissa, I wanted to jump off and start this conversation with you. You are a leader in that consumer experience and design practice. You have this really cool background. You have a master's in both art history and business administration. And you've been writing some really great articles about the travel industry, some really great thought leadership. Tell us about what you're calling on the travel industry to do.
Yeah, so thanks, Seth. Thanks for having us. What we're seeing a lot of is, as Jules mentioned, the rise of customer experience is a quite important element of what people are thinking about as they return to travel. And so we wrote an article called Better, Not Just Safer. And part of that came about because we started realizing there was a bit of a cleaning bake-off going on, which I think many of you will recognize, where folks were saying, look, at the very least, we need to be communicating that we have identify ways to make it safer to return physically. But that very quickly became table stakes. And so ultimately what we started thinking about was, how do you ensure that you deliver not just physical safety, but psychological safety? And ultimately came up with basically a 3-part framework to think about this. The very bottom, absolutely foundational elements around safety and ensuring people feel confident that they can return safely. But there's a psychological safety piece that comes next. How do you ultimately make sure that people feel very comfortable about the idea that not just they can come back, but they're willing to come back? And that piece is very much around, how do you communicate what you're doing, why you're doing it, and if things change, why that is. Right? There's a lot of patience from people who are willing to understand that. But the third and most impactful thing that we're seeing is from the companies who are delivering sort of distinctive types of experiences that are driven from the idea of solving the kinds of pain points that were there before. We certainly don't want to add to the friction of the experience, right? We all know we still take our shoes off because of something that happened nearly 20 years ago. But if we can actually think about things that were painful in the first place, that actually make more sense to remove now and actually make sense from a business standpoint, you have the opportunity to make some investments around safety that will pay off in the long run in terms of customer experience versus actually just being costs in the near term.
Okay, so kind of like this idea of these interventions where you can have like these 2 wins. I really love the way you put it. You said, better, not just safer. I think that's great. So Mark, you're at Hyatt Hotels, and I know you've been thinking a lot about this concept of better, not just safer. So maybe what kind of customer experience design interventions are you doing to hit both of those goals?
Sure, thank you, and I hope everyone is safe and well. And Melissa, that was a great article, and I think it was great because it spoke to an opportunity that, admittedly, right now is not all that easy to find. And for us at Hyatt, I think the best example of this work is in the mobile guest experience area. And what might have started as a less contact initiative really became centered on an insight that could live far longer than COVID. And that was that what our guests craved more than anything else was an increase in control. And so for us, that became the ability to expedite check-in, to look at housekeeping, not just as a yes, no right now during COVID, but also as the capability of building the opportunity to actually schedule it when it works for you, which would be much longer term from a benefit standpoint. From an F&B standpoint, we looked at mobile, and here we really followed the lead of our colleagues in Asia. So whether it's scanning QBR codes for meals or creating a more seamless connection with F&B outlets that are off property, it just opened up opportunities for us that could make sense today but could live much longer. And then lastly, it allowed us to ideate with some of our strategic partners. We signed a partnership with Headspace, which was originally targeted at meditation largely on property for some of our large corporate meetings. And that now has evolved. The Headspace content is now fully embedded in our app, and it's not just about meditation. It's about things and challenges that our guests face: sleeplessness, anxiety, parenting, and not even connected to when they're in stay. Just acknowledging that if something's important to our guests in their lives, regardless of whether they're traveling or not, it's important to us. It's been exciting.
I think that's powerful. So you're launching stuff quickly that you wouldn't have otherwise. I like that food and beverage thing. Maybe would you have normally connected with outside food and beverage partners before COVID, or is that an insight that came out of this?
We would have thought about those outlets, but not to the extent that this opportunity brings us. We're seeing our guests staying with us for longer periods of time, and we're also acknowledging the reality that not every F&B outlet is open consistently on property today. So again, looking at it for the benefits that will serve us today, but I think it was a shift given the environment that we're in for sure.
So a short-term solution, but that also drives you forward in the longer term and gives the customers what they want. So I think talking to customers, listening to what they want and being able to innovate around that is crucial. It's one of the things we talk about in the report. I'm going to go to you now, Andrew. Southwest is famous for its customer loyalty, for its focus on listening to the customer and retaining the customer. How are you listening to your customers today? What are they saying, and how are they responding?
Well, thanks, Seth. We we listen to our customers in a variety of ways. Probably the bigger one is our 10,000 plus member customer advisory council. It allows us to get a kind of a fast cycle, almost longitudinal study of people's sentiments during the COVID era. And we also supplement that with broader representative industry views, panels of customers. And that allows us to understand, the state of customer sentiment, the customer experience attributes that are most valued by customers at that point in time, and also to evaluate changes we might want to make into our CX. And right now, we just actually wrapped up wave 20 of research, and so since beginning of March. And so really, because COVID changes so quickly and sentiments towards COVID change quickly, we feel like we always need to be in market, listening to customers, and then feeding that back into our process. And so that really helped us develop what we call the Southwest Promise, which is our multi-layered approach to safety and peace of mind. So as Melissa talked about, a lot of airlines and other hospitality businesses have a safety regime. Ours, the customers told us it was about clean surfaces, clean air, and appropriate distancing. So we were able to modify our current customer experience to accommodate that. And then for peace of mind, it was about the open middle seats, which is not a safety attribute, but more makes people more comfortable to travel. And they realize that eventually that goes away, but it kind of helps them get off the couch for that first trip. Because once they travel, the intent to travel really skyrockets. People are almost 50-50 whether they're comfortable to travel right now. But once they experience at least our Southwest Promise, traveling with us, it goes up to 86 plus. And so really, once people understand it and experience it, they have a much different view. Their fears are allayed, and it really comes down. And so a lot of this may sound basics, but that's what, basics done very well is consistent with the Southwest brand. And that's what customers are telling us right now. They want basics done well more than they want innovative new attributes, at least as far as air travel goes. And so that's what we're concentrating on. And, it's showing up in the numbers. We have, far less Department of Transportation complaints than our competitors. And what we measure as our trip NPS, usually it's in the mid to 60s to low 70s. And now it's in the high 70s, low 80s. So people are really telling us they appreciate this approach. And, we'll keep doing this research. Wave 21 will come along. And if it tells us something different, we'll kind of modify our approach. That's what COVID's about, is just listening to customers and fast cycle modifications.
So wave 20, I love that. I was thinking maybe like, wave 4 or 5. It's wave 20. That's a real iteration. And so can I just emphasize something I think I heard you say, and I really want to drive that home. So You said that intent to travel was, you said 50%.
Yeah, if you ask people who have not yet traveled, how would you travel? It's about 50-50.
And then after they fly, it's
up to like high 80s. So that's a subset of the 50-50. So there's people who said they aren't comfortable, they still need to travel because they have an essential job or essential thing up in their family. They get off the couch, they travel, and then we ask them afterwards, how was that? Would you travel again? And there's a very strong positive reaction, high 80s to say, yeah, I'd do that again.
And so you're saying that this is a huge thing in the airlines, right? The open middle seat, and some of your competitors are starting to phase that out. And so you're sticking with that. Maybe not, it is a health and safety thing, but maybe not as much for the as much for the peace of mind of the customer, just to get them over that hurdle and to get their higher intent to travel.
It's not really health and safety. There's no data that says this helps safer. It's more comfort. And so when the prospect of the open middle seat or filled middle seat was, unsettling at first. And we've actually seen the people saying that's how important that is decline over time. So, and they all realize eventually this goes away. But we're clear to say it's comfort, whereas cleaning and clean air, that's about safety. And we're very strict about wearing masks and making sure that the filters are changed and all that kind of stuff.
So I really like the distinction between cleaning and comfort. I think that's a cool distinction. All right. Let's go back to you, Melissa. And one of the things that I think everyone was touching on, and we also, had our opening session last night with head of remote at GitLab, and he was talking about how quickly things have changed overnight. Everyone's working remote. Andrew is running, 100 waves of testing in just a few months. And so the industry is just moving so quickly these days. Like, Melissa, what are you thinking about? How are you thinking about speed and agility?
Sure. Well, Andrew's not alone in this many waves. I think we know more about customers these days than we probably ever have. The word agile gets a bit of a dirty, a dirty sort of reputation in many ways. It's been overused. But I would say the travel and hospitality industry has been a bit slow to adopt it. It's oftentimes sort of kept it maybe in the IT, software development, et cetera, sort of route. What we're seeing now is essentially 10 years of progress in about 90 days, right, as we got started. And I kid you not, that is truly across industries. And what I think is important about that is both the organizational side as well as some of the stuff Andrew talked about with testing and consumers, right? So we're seeing the ability to share content, right, across parts of the organization very quickly. Things like daily stand-ups, things like that allow cross-functional teams to essentially make decisions in a de-frictioned way. So how do you allow it to be quick? How do you allow it to be iterative? And then on the other hand, creating these new concepts, whether they're oriented around safety, comfort, all those types of things, in a way that allows you to very rapidly test them. They could be tested with surveys, they could be tested in the field, right? Actually sort of prototyping some things. And that brings kind of a design capability, which we often talk about as prototyping, to travel in a different way. And so if you think about the idea of co-creating your solutions with the people who are impacted, whether it's, say, the people behind a front desk or stewards and stewardesses, things like that, you actually have the ability to de-risk the likelihood that what you're spending the money and the investment on is actually going to be successful. This is not a time in which you want to be experimenting with very expensive solutions that don't work, right? And so we see this agility as a great way for people to start to prototype quickly and ensure what they're doing is effective.
Great. So Mark, to you, basically, let's talk about the same topic. What are you? Give us some examples of how you've been agile and what your ROI in those examples have been?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think about speed to market the same way. Things are changing so rapidly that it's never been more critical to be able to ideate and get to a solution as fast as possible. We, like Andrew, spend a lot of time talking to our guests and customers in live forums today, every single week. And oftentimes that agenda is not heavy, and it's based on us simply listening to what's in front of them. And probably one of the most successful initiatives we've launched in recent months is one called Work from Hyatt. And it was born from our guests saying to us, look, don't try to pull me to a traditional trip right now that I just cannot take. What would be more helpful is for you to listen and see what is in front of me right now. And in many cases, what we heard were examples like, look, my kids were supposed to go back to school, and now they're not going to go back to school. We have not been able to get out of this house. And so we created an offer that allowed our guests to feel cared for while we simply changed the venue of where they worked. The opportunity, instead of working from home, to consider working from Hyatt. And that subtle repositioning really resonated with our guests. Our operators rallied to make our guests feel cared for, and that we could create an experience on property that would feel like it was safe and a place where they could work safely, but then also step outside and enjoy some leisure time on the other side of that. We started with a handful of properties. It's now in 50 properties. And it's a good example of agility. It was 3 weeks for us, start to finish, from concept to all T's and C's and full execution. And it's taken off for us. It's done 3x what its pro forma was. And again, it was just this subtle notion of not trying to drive demand or bring demand across the way we typically would, but rather focusing more on listening and acknowledging that, look, we see you and we hear you, and we can provide an answer that makes sense for what you are facing today. It's been a nice example of both agility and the importance of speed to market for us.
That's great. So 3 times ROI in 3 weeks. And Andrew, to you, same thought on agility. And we're getting a little tight on time, I'm sorry, but so an agile answer on agility.
Fine. I would say that over the last few years, we've put in place a lot of new technology that is invaluable right now, and new governance. And if you told me in business school that governance was important, I would have fallen asleep or told you to get back to the numbers. But really, there's no confusion about what should be done where. And so we set up these a couple of years ago. These governance forums have paid great dividends. We got a trial run with the MAX aircraft when it was grounded last year, and we scale with COVID. And one example is we radically repositioned our network from a point-to-point to a modified hub and spoke. We gave the team the mandate on Wednesday. On the next Monday, they had a number of options for us to choose by. Within 2 weeks, it was implemented and customers reaccommodated. You don't do that very often. The last time we did it was 9/11. And for then, it took the whole department, 4 to 6 weeks with cots sleeping around, working around the clock on the weekends to get one solution, much less multiple solutions. And now we're doing this every month. So night and day. And so it was really about, we did our homework before this happened, because I can't imagine trying to do this if we hadn't started.
That's a great example. So it's also about the institutional ability to handle those kind of changes.
Yeah, very much.
All right. Well, we'll end the panel there. Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you so much, Melissa. It's been great talking with you. I'm going to hand it back to the rest of the team.
Thanks.
Hello.
Thank you, Seth, and to all the panelists for that rich discussion. Thought there were some great examples there. Loved Andrew's Wave 20 of research and Mark's example of the agility and the work from Hyatt launch in just 3 weeks. On behalf of McKinsey, I'd like to thank our partners at Skift as well for the deep collaboration in creating this travel industry report and for putting together this global forum, which I'm looking forward to over the next couple of days. I hope the actions we've outlined provide inspiration to many of you as you continue to adapt to today's challenges and look ahead to brighter days in the travel industry. So thank you for listening.
Likewise, thank you, McKinsey, for the great effort to work together. The report is available now on skift.com and mckinsey.com. We hope you enjoy it.